Hey everybody, Coach Mel here. We are on the beautiful Spokane River in Post Falls, Idaho. Closest cities are Coeur d'Alene, Idaho and Spokane, Washington. Where are you? Tell me where you live. Tell me why you think it's beautiful. Maybe invite me and Micah to come and join you. I'm here with my guest, Micah Waltz, today. And Micah is 34 years old, and I just met him at my dear friend Karen Fowler's house. He is a high school classmate of Karen Fowler's son, Chad Fowler. So we came over here the other night for a little get-together and started talking to him. And as a fellow self-taught chef, I thought his story was very interesting, and I wanted to pick his brain a little bit more and pull some stuff out of him, and hope he can inspire you guys to follow your dreams. So Micah, tell me about yourself.
Well, I was born in Ashland, Oregon. My mom moved up to Idaho for a Forest Service job, so that's when I started first grade and kind of started school here in Post Falls, and really started to kind of make my roots with trees, lakes, rivers, and all the respect of different seasons and different cultures that surround that. So I graduated Post Falls High School here. Was always the guy to go to with my friends to cook. If somebody was hungry, or we were up at a cabin, or we were up camping, I always found myself being the guy that naturally clinged to cooking. I think it's inspiration from my mom. She really grew up and showed me how to cook and showed me the right way to do things, like everything from scratch and not really taking shortcuts. So I always respected that about her, because she never really had the roots, and kind of self-taught herself to cook well and to make sure you're taking care of your family. So I took that kind of communion from her and the way that she reached out to people and saw how food kind of inspired people and made people happy and changed their moods from sad to happy, or just a meal, and how much it would change somebody just to be invited over and be like, hey, come to our barbecue, and they're like, you don't even know us. But that was kind of how I was brought up. I found myself here on the Coeur d'Alene River, being at the Fowlers, always cooking all the time, and their big kitchen and this massive pantry. I always challenged myself to be like, hey, let's make something different. Let's make something culturally different. Let's cook Asian, let's cook Indian. Let's do some different stuff. So that's when I really got my roots. When I graduated high school, found Scottsdale Culinary Institute in Arizona, with Cordon Bleu, which are no more, which is sad, but good fundamentals. From there, came back, cooked for about a year here in Idaho, and I worked for Hagedon. I did my externship, and it's sad to say, I would love to cook in Idaho if the money was substantial enough to provide for a family, but it's really not the tale here in Idaho. It's I got out of school, and they offered me something so mind-boggling to me that was not even be able to take care of me paying for my school loans. So my sister moved to Vegas at that time, and so she was like, hey, you gotta come down here, the food's amazing, you can stay with us, you can get your feet planted. So I moved out there, and my first job was at Bellagio. And I remember it was like culinary school all over again. I mean, some of my chefs worked for Daniel Boulud, worked for these amazing chefs in New York, and they were nitty gritty to the T, like I would say very Hell's Kitchen. But at the same time, in Hell's Kitchen, when you watch the show, it's like he's barking at these people. What people don't see on the other side is, if that chef's really going to keep those cooks in the kitchen, on the back end, he's saying, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. I was yelling at you so you could be better at this, where you need to improve at this and that. So that's what the show really doesn't show. I mean, they show all the the hype and the yelling and things like that. And that, in all honesty, is pretty realistic in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you know, give respect on the back end, those cooks aren't going to be there very long. So, anyways, worked there. You know, that's where I really found like my foundation of cooking, and that's when I really started to get into, you know, this could be something big for me. Like, I want to be a chef. I want to, you know, like, it's always been my dream to be a chef, but I started putting these tools in my pockets of, you know, like, this is how you talk to people, this is the foundation, you know, this is how you start your day, you know, that's when really things started getting, you know, puzzled together of, you know, hey, I want to be an executive chef someday. So, left there as a cook. After that, I started working at Le Cirque. Le Cirque is in Bellagio also. At that time, I was kind of working with the same chef that I had worked. His name was Rob Moore. And he kind of took me under his wing, taught me everything, and like, anyways, he was working at Prime at the time. I was working at Le Cirque. When we were there, it was a 2-star Michelin restaurant. So that's when I really started to, like, you know, I worked on Fish Station. So working on Fish Station at a French restaurant is like, you're like making love to fish. Like, it's like so soft, and like you gotta, because all this fish is very delicate and you can only cook it this way. So that just really finely tuned things. Got to paint some plates and do this really, you know, crazy art and stuff like that, and kind of found out that I could do it, but it's not really my niche. I knew that someday I wanted to open a restaurant that is going to make money. And let's be honest, any great restaurant that has higher caliber, you know, like, you know, there's some pretty rare unicorns that make money, but a lot of those restaurants never make money because all the ingredients they have on the menu are just so substantially expensive. So, went from there, went to John George Steakhouse at Aria. That was my first sous chef job, and it was great. I mean, our restaurant was killing it. We were doing $20 million a year, you know, not have to worry about anything. I remember one day I was with Rob, and we're out at his pool, and, you know, it was the day before our food costs, and he's like, oh, our food cost is at 30%. We got to bring it up 2 more percent. So we literally from his pool on the phone like ordered like $60,000 in Kobe beef from like purveyor, like from the pool to boost it up. So we didn't look too good. So it was like, oh, you got to hit 30% every month. So you got to give yourself a little leeway with putting, you know, frozen crab legs in the freezer or whatever it might be. So worked there for about 2.5 years. It was great. There was a cap for me. There was no way for me to move up. You know, like, I was never going to get the guy's job that was above me. So, I went out, kind of stepped off the strip a little bit and started working for a company, Blau and Associates, Honey Salt. Worked there a little bit, opened a small kind of little pub named Maid LV. Was a sous chef there for a while, and then moved over to Andiron where I was executive. And that's when I really started to, you know, do this cycle again of, you know, my chef I used to work for, you know, Rob Moore, I was now that guy to all these different kids in my kitchen. And, you know, I got to do my own dishes sometimes. It was just difficult sometimes because everybody knows as a restaurateur, you know, like, you come in and then your husband comes in, he wants something some way, and you want something some way. And that's always a difficult thing when you're, you know, being a chef for someone else. And sometimes that trickle of information is difficult. So, worked there. All those cooks that I had there are now sous chefs. Like, one's a sous chef at Wolfgang Puck. You know, I got him a job. He was started as a cook and he got a sous chef job 6 months later. Another girl that was from Montana, Michelle, who worked for me. She's now, you know, a pastry chef. You know, and ran a catering company. You know, so all these kids really had the fire underneath of them. And I gave them the tools just like, you know, somebody else gave me the tools. So, after Andiron, had our first kid. Our only kid, Hartley, me and my wife Connie, and she's just about 3 today. But that's when, like, everybody has a kid, but until you work in the kitchen, you understand it's tough. It's like you spend like so much of your life in the kitchen. It's massive. It's 13 hours a day. It's 14. I mean, you give so much of yourself that you get home and you try to give it to your kid, and really all you can do is give it to them on their days off. Love and hanging out and things like that. But went to Wolfgang Puck and worked at Bar and Grill at MGM. I was executive sous chef there. Essentially, I was running the restaurant like a chef. That's the way that they run things around there. There was an opening at Palazzo for executive sous, and I knew it'd pay a lot more. I was hoping the hours would be less, but it definitely put more, money in the bank for a little stability for my wife and the kids. So did that, and that's kind of where I've left off in the culinary trail. From here on out, I want to open my own spot. I want to, expand my wings. I think, I've been through 3 or 4 different restaurant openings. Any uncomfortability I thought that I'd have, I don't have it anymore. I mean, it's ready to go. I married my wife up at Cataldo Mission 6 years ago. Had a great, wedding in the Cataldo Mission, a good reception. But I really haven't been back since then. It's been 6 years for me to come back here.
Wow.
So the reason is working too hard,
Yeah, I can relate to that.
So, but I see myself when I'm owning my own spot, delegating down, having people underneath my wings, so I don't have to spread them so wide, So
Totally get it.
kind of where I came from, and kind of a background of cooking, but.
Awesome. I love it. You've got such a clear picture of your resume. Sometimes I have to think about mine. I just want to touch on a couple of points you said. Going back to, I felt the same way that you did about cooking. I had a lot of problems with my mom when I was younger, and lady took me in, and she was from Indonesia. She spoke Dutch, and the one thing that I related to is, in a sense, the cook has all the power. The chef has all the power, but in a positive way, and the chef brings people together. And I noticed that people used to flock around her, and you could just see the joy that came from eating her food.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of wanted to get into that. And I couldn't read her cookbooks because they were in Dutch, so thankfully I learned how to cook without measuring, which is a godsend. I'm sure you know that.
Yeah, because I'm sure it was all in grams or kilograms. Or...
Yeah, and I think that in turn, it sounds like Micah's a lot like myself, where your hobby and your interests end up becoming your profession.
Yeah.
Which is good because that's your passion. So. We're in Idaho here, so he touched a little bit on, it's a bit harder here, the pay scale is a lot less, so good for you for having the courage to leave and make something of yourself over there. Why do you think that restaurants don't make it? You were saying, a lot of these restaurants just don't make it. What do you think it is? Is it the product that they're serving?
Since I've been back and since I've always eaten around here, is my biggest thing is I love to cook seasonally. Mm-hmm. It's so easy for a chef to put stuff on the menu that's year round, but to really capture seasons and North Idaho has legit seasons. I was living in Vegas where it was just like there's winter and there's summer. That's it. So but there's so many different things, that come around those seasons. Like, you can't have butternut squash soup, on the menu in the summertime. Like, put things. My goal, what I want to do, is put things on the menu and represent them the way that they're supposed to be. And then the ultimate goal is for you to eat a piece, say, asparagus. I want that asparagus to be the best asparagus you ever had. Nice and al dente, the color's locked in. Maybe it's a crazy flavor element to it, maybe a texture, something like that. But so many times flavors are masked, or they're cooked too long, or too smoky, or this or that. I think respect to food, the way that I was taught is like make it right,
Yeah,
and
get it
make
right.
it better than you can make it home, and
Yeah.
people are gonna come back and eat it. So.
Yeah. And you talked about you were capped out. I felt, if anybody is watching this that knows me, I tend to open businesses about every 4 years for that very reason, because there's only one of me, and I feel like I get capped out, and I just always feel that need to grow.
Yeah.
So, don't you think that capping out is a good thing? And,
Of course,
and it kind of pushes you to the
it
next
puts
level?
yourself in check. Like it. If you're trying this, thing, the same thing all the time, and it's not working, like you gotta find another way to make it happen. So.
And then it sounds like you're really into people, which my famous quote that I always tell people in business is, if you make it about people, the money will flow freely. If you make it about the money, they'll smell rat. And first and foremost, anything I do is solely driven for people. So you're going to be just fine with the direction you're going. And it sounds like you're really good at lifting other people up, even though they're below you, and helping them get up, because you know what it feels like to be at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I like to pride myself as a manager that if anybody would ever ask me like, hey, what do you think about this person, I would say, he was a great chef. He always took interest in my personal life, or hey, how are your kids? How is anything? There's certain lines of work you cross, but if you're not personable with somebody, they're gonna show up for a paycheck. You want them to show up for a career, or even a job. But as soon as they start to show up for a paycheck, it's really all about the money to them. And sometimes you put a little fire under people's feet and say, hey, there's a possibility to become a chef someday, or a sous chef. If you want the tools, I have them. I'll teach you if you want them. And so those are the type of people that you get here and there, that you almost feel like it's a given. You have to give back.
You do.
Because it was embedded in you and it was taught to you, so you have to let it trickle down for the rest of the chefs. And it's tough these days, just with the Le Cordon Bleu closing. Like, it used to be, I would say, 1 out of every 5 cooks I would hire would be somebody solid that I'd have 3 years, or something fundamental that I could use them with. And now it's like 1 every 10 cook that you hire is just like, it's tough. But it's almost easier these days to hire somebody with the cleaner, like, doesn't know a lot, so you can teach them exactly the way that you want things, rather than teaching someone that has worked so many different places, and they're like, oh, I know everything. I don't like the way you cook. So.
I so agree. People were so shocked. My husband and I have employed a lot of people in our small town, and a lot of the people who applied for jobs were so shocked that I would hire them without experience. And I'm the same way you are. I would rather them not have experience, so I can teach them my morals and values and how I want our company to be represented. So I'm totally agree. You get somebody that's been with a different company for 10 years, more than likely they're going to bring their good habits and their bad habits
Of
from
course,
that place.
yep.
So your wife Connie, obviously a big supporter of you.
Yep.
How does she feel about, like, the one thing that I do know we have in common is you're a worker. You've been hustling, straight grind, lots of hours, lots of sacrifices. How has Connie felt about the all the hours that you were there?
Well, not to put like any shine more on a chef's wife, but chef's wife does a lot of stuff. I mean, you look at an average person that works 8 hours a week, or even 10. I mean, 10's like, wow, you work a lot of hours. I was coming from doing like 75 hours a week, so that's a lot of weight in a family to pick up on the backside.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of respect, and there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of thank yous that I have to give to her, but You know, I think in the back of her head, she always knows it's for a reason.
Yes.
And the reason is for me to open up my own place someday.
That's awesome.
And, you know, to get to a point where it's like, I have so many tools in my pocket that I can't fail. You know, like I know how to control things so well that, you know, I can train somebody underneath me to take care of things, and I can work less hours, but I can also have the ability to know that I train these people so well that they're doing that dish the same way that I taught them. And going back to North Idaho, and I think why some restaurants fail here is consistency. You know, like it's like throwing on a specialty pizza that everybody loves, and then you don't bring it back till 6 months later. It's we have these tools in Vegas that we always use. Avero is a company that basically shows you how many of these you sell and how many of these you sell and which month you sell it in, and if it was, you know, some crazy weekend like the North Idaho Fair and you sold more of this dish and more of that. There's a lot of tools these days that logistically help you as a chef. You know, I say if you have a dog on your menu and a dog is basically something that's not selling at all, it's wasting space on your menu.
Exactly.
Get something on there that's going to sell. Get something on there that's cost efficient.
Yeah.
Great food costs. Get it on there. But you know, there's a lot of tools to make sure you won't fail these days. Rather than, you know, old school chef 20 years ago didn't have these computer tools and all this enhancement in the kitchen where they're just like, well, I don't know what we're not selling a lot of. What are we not selling a lot of? You know.
Do you welcome? At your restaurant, would you welcome what people want?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always want to hear feedback, and there's plenty of social media outlets for people to do that. You know, you don't like the dish, put it on Yelp.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold that dish accountable. But you gotta know that some people, you know, like I'll give you a crazy example: uni, which is sea urchin. You know, like some people go out to all-you-can-eat sushi and order uni. That uni has been out of the water for like 2 days, and it's not served like that day or just a little bit out of the 18-hour window or 24-hour window. It's not at its natural captured, like, amazing property. So, you know, that's when I hate when people go, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that type of dish. I don't like that. Maybe they haven't had it before, you know? And that's like a big thing for me is like, if you can eat this dish and it's all authentic, whether it be, you know, ramen in the wintertime or something, pure Japanese, you know, the art that comes with it, and you could say you don't like it, that's fine. But when people do knockoffs of it, and, you know, and sometimes you're getting that up here because people are wanting to be culturally different. And I'm not saying I'm Japanese and I can make the best ramen in the world, but I'm going everywhere here. But all I'm trying to say is, if you're pure in doing things on the menu and not doing too many things, and you put your heart and soul into those things, they're going to be way better dishes.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to Cheesecake Factory and you're reading through a book and you felt like, oh my gosh, I just read 14 pages, it's really tough for you to decide. I want to take the ability out of your hands to even know what to order.
Yeah.
I want to put some tasting menus on and do some 3 courses, 4 courses, and say, hey, this is who I am.
Yeah.
You know, you might be surprised, but put your trust in me as a chef to make great dishes. I want you to take choices out of your hands and enjoy food.
I love that.
So
I mentored a girl yesterday. She confided in me for advice on a coffee stand. If you are local, you'll know that I opened Leopard Lattes and ran it for 13 years. And touching on what you just said, Micah, I totally agree, because the one thing that I told her is you can learn from my mistakes, and I got bored there after 13 years, so I probably had too much on the menu, but looking at it now and the experience that I have now, less is best. So my advice to her was, put a few of your specialty things out, but put your best out, you know, and don't overwhelm people with this giant menu, you know. Focus on a few things that you do really well. Another thing you said, Micah, you can't fail. I think there's a reason that I met you. I know I don't believe in coincidence. I have that attitude right now and that drive right now. That can't fail attitude you have because of all the tools that you have under your belt.
Yep.
And I just launched my business, and the one thing that I told everybody, I couldn't have done this 5 years ago. I couldn't have done this 1 year ago. It took me my life's work and experiences to get to this level. And when you get to this level, it feels really good to say, I'm 100% confident I'm an expert in my field. I'm 100% confident Micah is an expert in his field. It does. It takes years.
I think it pushes yourself to the point where you're like, I don't think I could be any harder on myself. I don't think I could work any harder than this. Like it puts you to these limits where you're like, they've become comfortable, and that's tough in ways of like hours that are worked or dishes that you've done or just everything you've put into it. You feel comfortable with it. So
it's good. It's nice when it comes easy. You're there.
Yeah.
When it's not a struggle, chef. And I wondered, do chefs make simple meals, or is it fancy at home? What?
Well, growing up in North Idaho, it was always for me, it was always soup. I've always loved soups. I love the cultural ways around soup, whether it be, I mentioned before, ramen, or just the other day I was up camping on the Culinary River and made some legit pho.
Pho is my favorite.
So,
I can eat that every day.
I mean, I love oxtails. I mean, if I had to eat one dish, it'd either be some caribou pork, ramen, some tonkatsu, which is like a cloudy pork broth, or oxtail pho. I think I love the way the oxtails give you this kind of meat lipstick. That there's just some dishes you eat that are like, wow, this is amazing. So yeah, I'd have to go with soup. It's got to be soup. It's something for me. It's a cold day in Idaho. You make soup. Nobody's gonna complain. My mom would always make chicken noodle soup or something that you could kind of put in a crock pot and then slowly cook and have it ready for later. So I'd go with that.
Does Connie cook, or you?
Connie cooks sometimes. She's got her heavy hitters of lasagna.
Yeah.
And she makes some different dishes that she knows she's good at, but you got to give it to her. It's tough. It's tough to cook for a chef.
Well, yeah.
But she, I think that's something she doesn't think about is simplicity as a chef. Sometimes, I'll give you a great example. I worked in when I was going to culinary school in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was working at the Biltmore, which is a big resort there, and so I worked in their banquet department, and we would cook filet mignon every single day. Filet mignon, everybody knows the steaks. It's like, wow, that's the cream of the crop. It's the best. I was so sick of filet mignon that I just wanted a hamburger. It's the perspective is if you always have this amazing cut of beef, sometimes you're gonna want that horrible cut of beef.
Yeah.
Because this was too tender, or this. It's comfort,
yeah.
and I think for me, soup is comforting.
So what motivates you, Micah? What motivates you every day?
In the past, it's always been getting myself to a point where I feel ready and I'll open a restaurant. And now I'm feeling to that point. But family. I always knew that I'd have a family. I didn't know how many kids, and we're happy with one right now. And we give her all the love in the world, and she's starting to become a little firecracker. But family's always something that I've pride myself. And that's the way that I was raised. If you're a Waltz or your last name is this, it better have a good staple on it or a good stamp. So that's something that's always pushed me for sure.
So what's your favorite quote?
Well, I think I went over with you the other night, and I don't know if I like it because it's very, very kitchen-esque, and it probably goes against my Christian mentality, but I had a chef, or I actually came up with it. I said, if you want praise, go to church. And a lot of times in a kitchen, what it means is you're not going to get a pat on the back all the time. You're not going to get this, wow, you made this amazing dish, this customer, You're going to get it on the back side and the back end of me giving you a raise or me doing this and doing that. So many times you see on these cooking shows or, this lady's like all bubbly and like, that's not the way the kitchens are. You're making this dish 35 times tonight and it's got to be the same way. So, I mean, if you're looking for praise in a kitchen, it doesn't come a lot. There's not a lot of time for it.
Yeah.
The time that you're thinking about doing it all the time is like, oh, there's another ticket coming in.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's something funny I came up with, and I, people get it, if they're spiritual, but in a kitchen, you're not going to get all the love in the world. Sometimes it's going to be nitty gritty. It's going to be grind. And then maybe at the end of the night we have a shift drink or something like that, and that's the praise you'll get. But if you're wanting, like, in the moment praise, it doesn't come in the kitchen. So.
I like it. So, Micah, if you were to write a mission statement that's on the front of your menu for your new restaurant, what are a couple of good sentences that you would say?
This is probably the toughest question you've asked, because there's a. I would say probably from a mission statement is, like, I promise you to always uphold the greatest of seasonality and the greatest of the dishes I can make for you. Please allow the restaurant to entertain you and to take over your palate and, come back and explore us more, because that's what we want to do.
I love that.
So.
That's awesome. That's perfect. If you forget it when you're writing your menu, you can just watch this video, okay?
Well, my wife I'll be at restaurants sometimes, and I'll be like, even last night we were eating some, like, pork belly, like, fried pork belly, and I'm like, you should make a pork belly corn dog. Like all these different spins in my head, because, let's be honest, these days, like, fair food turned into really nice food.
Sure.
It's comfort,
Casual
meaning like,
dining.
wow, I can,
Yeah.
So, I get that all the time. She's like, keep it in your head. And I got it.
Don't forget it. What's the name of your restaurant? Do you know?
Well, I have two concepts right now. The first one I think I'm going to open just because it's going to be a little bit smaller of a restaurant. Will be called Cloud Ramen.
I love it.
So
back to the pho.
But in Japanese it's koma, so it'll be ramen koma.
Okay.
So koma in Japanese means cloud.
Okay.
And sometimes when you eat these broths, like the tonkatsu and stuff like that, it's like it has this pillowy creaminess, beautiful texture to it that it almost tastes like, you're eating a cloud. And I like that. And on that menu will be super simplistic, 4 different types of ramen, maybe some gyoza, some pot stickers, a pork belly bowl, maybe some Takana fried rice, which is like pickled mustard leaf fried rice, and then maybe some like different types of like sodas. I don't think people really do like a cherry yuzu Coca-Cola or like some different really bright type of drinks. That's going to be my first concept, but my bread and butter that I've always dreamed of and what I want to open someday will be called Waltzing Walrus. Mm-hmm. Incorporating my name, having a cool little logo.
I love it.
Already been made for me from somebody up in or down in Las Vegas, but that's really where I'm gonna encapsulate a lot of my seasonality, and I really like raw fish. I want a crudo section on there. Crudo in Italian just means raw. But, it doesn't have to be Japanese. Like, I want ceviche on the menu. I want, Peruvian. I don't know if you've eaten Peruvian ceviche before, but Peruvian ceviche, like, they do, like, it's called leche de tigre. And leche is basically translation, milk of the tiger. But they do this, like, coconutty kind of, like, different ceviche.
Nice.
So, there's a lot of stuff that I've gone throughout my career, and I'm like, I'm gonna have that on my menu.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have that on my menu.
I love it.
Like, I think some tuna nachos and stuff like that, and then working towards the main menus. I want to work with some purveyors around town My cousin went to school with a girl in Montana that has, you know, has cattle in Montana, and they all grade out prime. So I want to start working with and having this spider web of people that I've always known that like, hey,
Yeah.
can I get your microgreens? Can
Yeah.
I get your beef?
Yeah.
I know a guy that grows mushrooms up in Bonners Ferry.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
that's people want a story with their food,
Yeah.
but nothing's better than like, because a lot of people will like order from a company like, hey, I want this, I want that, I want that, and you're not going to be able to get all these ingredients from you know, Joe Schmo or mom and pop, but you want whatever is going to stand out on the menu for that dish.
That's awesome.
You know, you want to get those prime ingredients from them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd say probably, you know, some different comfort soups. Like I have this soup that it's basically like a curried clam chowder.
Oh yeah.
So it's like this mix between Thai and, you know, American. On the main menu, I want, you know, some simple things like maybe like a play on salt and pepper pork chops, which is a Chinese type of dish. But I use some local pork, and we do some like almost I'd say German accents to it, like sauerkraut and some different raisins, and you know, I'm all over the place because, you know, I have all these roots that I've learned from like a German chef, and then I have all these roots I've learned from like this Japanese guy and this, you know, this Chinese guy and all this stuff. So there's so much good, you know, melting pot between them that people really haven't done. But I know those are dishes that are gonna come in a while. I gotta keep it vanilla and get you in the doors, and then I can start putting the charm on you. So
I like that. I think a lot of people are afraid to step out of the box and that people aren't going to like it, but I love things that are really unique. I do food prep classes at my house, and I provide all the spices, and I really turn people on to some really different spices that they're not used to cooking with, and they always say, oh, I would never think about that. And it's like, don't be afraid. Like, you know,
like a good example would be like harissa, or something like that.
Harissa.
Some Moroccan spice. You're like,
yeah,
I bought it. I don't really know what to do with it.
yeah,
But I think that's what a lot of people are scared of at home.
yeah,
Is my advice for somebody cooking at home would be this: cook the basics, feel comfortable with the basics. Once you get to that point, start exploring with different cultures. There's so many cookbooks. Go on Amazon. Say, you know, you love pad thai. Buy a Thai cookbook.
yeah,
Try making some things from there. Like, you might surprise yourself.
yeah,
Some of the recipes aren't that crazy.
yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
say for instance in Thai, Tom Kai soup. Tom Kha is just literally coconut soup.
Yeah.
There's probably, you know, 20 ingredients in there, but
Yeah.
it's really rustic. It's
Yeah.
something you could make.
Yeah.
But, you know, somebody looks at a dish and gets intimidated by it because they don't know what some of the ingredients are, and they're like, oh, I can't make that. I'm just going to go to the neighborhood Thai restaurant and eat it, you know, but
Yeah.
you would surprise yourself.
Yeah, and from a health perspective, I like to teach people that I am not eating chicken and broccoli every day with no flavor.
Yep.
Everything I make is exploding with flavor. I use fresh garlic, I use fresh herbs, I use wonderful spices from all over the world. So it doesn't, I'm just trying to squash that myth with people. Oh, you want to lose weight, that you just have to keep it bland and never use salt. Well, the reason you shouldn't use salt is if you're eating processed foods, because processed foods carry a lot of salt. If you're making your own meals from scratch, two of my least favorite words, you'll hear me say this a lot, are store-bought. It's my pet peeve. I want to see more people put passion back into their cooking. Make things from scratch. Stop buying store-bought because it's got a lot of preservatives in it, it's got a lot of sodium, and it has a lot of sugar. If you want to start to control your weight, eat real whole food. Okay, I'll get back off my tangent.
No,
there.
that's good. That's good.
So what can you tell people, Micah? Maybe somebody's watching this video, maybe they don't necessarily want to pursue opening a restaurant, or maybe they're not even in the field of food, but they want to make something of themselves and they want to follow their passions and dreams. What can you tell them? What can you give them? Any piece of advice? You have a lot of self-confidence, because of what you know.
Yeah.
Have you always had that self-confidence?
No, there's always a lot of questions in my head, like, well, will I be this good? Will I be that great? And that's one thing to say right there is, as a cook, or at home, or as a chef, you got to keep an open mind and know that as soon as you close yourself off to thinking, oh, I'm so good at this, I can't be any better, then you're gonna miss out on a lot of opportunities to grow. And that's what cooking is. I mean, if you look at cooking styles and restaurants that people have now compared to 20 years ago, I mean, you could only see 20 years from now what food's going to be like. It's going to be this modern gastronomy of you're eating this clear broth pea soup, and all of a sudden it tastes like pea soup, and then in front of your eyes it turns green, and like it's going to be a magic show. And I think that's the way the food's turning. My advice for anybody cooking at home is, like I said, just keep it basic, like eat what you want. Everybody craves things. It could be like, oh man, it's Tuesday, I want some tacos. Go out and get the stuff. Great example, my wife has a paleo cookbook, and she turned me on to it one time. She made these coconut and tapioca tortillas. No starch in them, super flavorful.
Nice.
Make fish tacos, just like you're saying. Some great spice on them. Use a little pineapple. Use, when you start eating processed foods is when the flavor starts to be lost.
Exactly.
So, and a lot of those things are just putting these fillers in that are like, oh, how can I make money off this product?
Mm-hmm.
But if you made something super simple, say it was tacos, went to the store, fish tacos, got nice fish, did a simple, dressing on the top, maybe had some fresh crunchies over, some cilantro and whatever it might be, and did an alternative tortilla, or maybe you bought, and did your own tortilla or something like that. I think people just need to delegate the time. Time is the biggest thing for everybody these days. It's, 30-minute meals, or I only have an hour, I only have that. You're going to eat pretty simple in the week if you're time constrained. Let's be honest. But if you have the time and you delegate it in a block in your day to do something nice, you're gonna have fun. You're not gonna feel rushed. You're gonna cook a dish. You're like, hey, you know what? We should make those again.
Yeah.
And that's when you stop as a cook at home or as a chef, when you hit this like breaking point of like, wow, I really killed it tonight.
Yeah.
And you could there's a moment in everybody's cooking career, whether it being at home, or you're cooking breakfast, and all of a sudden you made this, I cooked that bacon like super crispy, but it wasn't too crispy, and like there's a lot of repetition I do, and that's why I make the food, always standard like that. But when you yourself do it at home and knock it out of the park, and all it could be is like a, hey, thanks, hon, that was a really good breakfast. So your daughter's like, I want more bacon. Those are like sparks in your culinary life that you get. That's like loving, wow, this is.
Yeah, I get it.
I just made pancakes today, and my daughter's over there, grin to grin, saying thank you, Daddy. It could be any perspective of that, but that's when you need to stop and put the love on food.
I love it. I had a catering business for a few years, and after I stopped catering, I still have a joy of cooking. And my husband would always say, why do we always have to bring something when we go to people's house? Well, I love cooking, and that's how I show my love to people. If there is somebody in a crisis, I'll cook for them. If there's somebody in the hospital, I'll cook for them. If somebody's having a bad day, I'll cook for them. That is what I was given to give to other people. So
exactly.
I find great joy in it. I don't find it uncomfortable. I know a lot of people do. So speaking of, you had mentioned, proudest moments. What's your proudest moment in relation to cooking that you were just like either had to call your mom or had to call your wife, or just that day you were just like, oh my gosh, this is
Well, I would almost, it's not this big wow moment for me, but it was a testament to my hard work and kind of pushing the envelope of doing something different. And it's super small, but it's all me. It's actually two parts to it. Is when I was executive of Andiron, I was part of making all these different recipes. I built this restaurant with these people that that are now on US Today, and they have a recipe book, and some of those recipes are mine. Like what you got to understand, when you work for corporations, you work for different people. They own you in a way. They own your recipes, but just that spark to know that somebody at home in some random place in, say, Michigan or in New Jersey or something has this cookbook, and the cookbook's called Honey Salt, who is their sister restaurant, but there's a lot of recipes that segue from both of the restaurants.
That's awesome.
And so there's recipes you're cooking that I literally typed and failed and did different things of it to make it the way that it is. And all those increments you had was through my hands, like it was something that I created. So that's a really proud moment for me to know that somebody's cooking my dishes. And then the second part too, when I was there, I won an award from Las Vegas Weekly, and they give out these random awards for best restaurant so I actually won an award for best riff on Mexican snack. And so I did a bacon cheddar churro. In a savory essence, so basically pâte choux, and then mixed in bacon, white cheddar, and then encapsulated with white cheddar powder, served it with like a white cheddar sauce. But something that me and my pastry chef we actually looked at it as a chef perspective of, hey, we have all this bacon scrap. I gotta find a way to get it on the menu, so then we can make money off of it. And that's a real life chef lesson there. Is like, you can't have things you got to keep making money of things. Things can't sit in your walking or they turn bad or do this or do that. But I won that award, Las Vegas Weekly for best Mexican riff, and you would look at me and be like, man, you don't cook Mexican. But that's not what it's about. It's about finding a different culture and finding a way to put something that, like, a savory churro. Nobody does that. Yeah. But you eat them and you're like, wow, those are awesome.
That's awesome. So. Iggy, if you're watching this, you would love that. So it sounds like you're really creative. I like that. I mean, I'm that type of person where I could open up my fridge and be like, okay, I've got these 4 things. And I
want people to point on a menu and be like, you gotta order that. That sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And then when you eat it, I want it to surround the same thing of like, that's what I thought it was going to taste like, but it tastes way better than I thought it was.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, Micah's been traveling for 3 months now, and he's taken some time off with his family. And I have to tell you, it's probably a blessing in disguise, because that's probably when you do your best work up here.
I do.
When you're away from work and you can just get your creative juices flowing. So I'm sure you've been taking a lot of mental notes. So where are you going?
Well, right now I'm based in Boise. Boise is exploding. Like, I know North Idaho is getting big, but like Boise, there's so much opportunity, and it's becoming a tech town. Becoming this town where I can't afford to live in San Francisco. I can't even afford to live in Portland anymore, because rent's through the roof, But these telecom jobs, they're able to work from home, and they're able to do things anywhere. So you're finding this massive influx of people, and mainly California. Everybody's like, oh, Californians don't come here or whatever. Like, I welcome Californians because their palate is they welcome different cultures, and they grew up in this big melting pot of like, hey, what do you want to eat tonight? It's not like, hey, let's go eat steak, like it's like, oh, let's go get some Korean, or oh, let's get some, so I like that, that type of culture around them. But they're bringing a lot more money to town, and it drives things up, and I know people have their views on it left and right about it, but make money out of it.
Yeah, Californians have definitely supported my businesses through the years. And the one thing that I notice when I travel to California is like everybody is a good cook. I mean, there's so much competition when you get into a bigger cities. It's probably a lot harder for you to stand out.
Well, I think, we have really good, like, mom cooks, dad cooks up here in Idaho, and they make really good basic food. And somebody in California is willing to step out of the box all the time. And let's be honest, most of the time it's just money driven. You have all this money to spend. Of course, you're going to buy all these crazy expensive ingredients and do this and do that. But, they like you said, like the average cook, they're willing to watch a cooking show, or they're willing to do this or willing to do that. You can get as comfortable as you want, but you got to step outside the box.
What's the time frame on Cloud Ramen?
Well, I've been looking up and down some spots, and I'm not close to doing a restaurant in Boise. I still think the possibility of doing something here is there, but I want to keep all these possibilities open. And I want it to feel right, and I just feel like one day I'm gonna be driving down the street and see the spot and it's gonna slap me in the face. But maybe that's a little too realistic. But I think that with restaurants, everybody knows location. And I know that I'm not gonna get that tight of location. I might get location down the road or something like that. But that's when you gotta pride yourself on your craft and your art and know that. People might drive 2 miles out of the way. Absolutely. And go to your spot.
They will.
And, I want to start small. This is a great example, like the White House. The White House has been in Post Falls forever. And you still, to this day, have to wait to eat there. And the original one that they had at the Oval Office, and I know this because my dad used to do all, like, the maintenance for Raji at the White House. And I want to give a shout out to Post Falls and...
Yeah.
But, people used to wait hours to eat there. And there's certain craze about that, and I think it's probably the same for, like, Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Or, I could probably name a few restaurants here on Olive Garden. Like, who in their mind would wait a half an hour to eat at Olive Garden?
Yeah.
Well, the person that has 6 people with them and everybody's set on eating there.
Yeah.
So, I think there's something to be said if you have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this, like...
Ooh.
We're going to eat here. Yeah. And, there's tools. There's like, hey, have a cocktail or have a drink or something. Enjoy yourself. Because you psyched yourself in your mind. Yeah. And you got yourself ready to come out and eat at this place. Absolutely. And nothing's going to stop you. Absolutely. So that's the type of place I want to be, so.
If you're watching this, Raji's a friend of mine. And I actually just told him this on his 50th birthday. Raji, before I knew you, and like you said, the White House was in the Oval Office, mm-hmm. So tiny little house. If you're not from here, what would you say? 10 tables, maybe?
Yeah, like 30 people.
I was on a date, and we drove quite a ways to come to Post Falls to go to your restaurant, and I was looking at my date, and he was looking at me, and we were kind of like, should we wait? And I'll never forget this because you came up to me and you handed me a Turkish cigar, and you motioned for the server to get over and get everybody that was standing in the front something to drink. And that's all it takes. It goes back to the people. If I go into a restaurant, I was in the restaurant business for 20 years. The number one thing that you can do is acknowledge somebody. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can't get to them right away. Give them something. Give them an acknowledgement. Put a drink in their hand. Make them feel like you want them to wait for your food because it's going to be so amazing. But it's funny that you would say that because I just had that conversation a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
So, well, Micah, we appreciate your interview. Sounds like you are super creative and super fun, and we look forward to doing Where Are They Now, right, Josh?
Sounds good.
We're going to drive to wherever it is you end up.
Please.
We're going to check up on you and interview you, and I think you should probably write a cookbook.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It sounds like you have some fun
it's something,
recipes.
I have in my entourage that I want someday is kind of like my best hits, and, if it's popular enough to sell it, great. If not, it's a good recollection, of what I've done and what I feel is my soul of cooking.
That's
so.
Awesome. That's how I feel about the business that I'm doing now. If I didn't make $1 from Melfit, this is my diary.
Yeah.
This is my life. So Glad to share it
Perfect.
with you. Thanks for joining us
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
And we wish you and your family the best. I'm sure you guys are going to kill it.
Yep.
And like always, we hope to connect, inspire, and motivate you. And thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.